Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. And just bear with me while I get in control of my screen. So, as James says, I'm Nicki. My company is the Wellbeing People. My background is in the corporate world, managing large teams of individuals and very much supporting their well-being. I launched the Wellbeing People back in 2016 with the aim of embedding proactive wellbeing into employers. Having been an employer myself and struggling with sickness absence and engagement and staff retention, the real crux of this is all about workplace wellbeing. And if we can put a proactive approach in, then we're reducing the sickness absence and we're keeping our staff happy and engaged. So that's a bit of background on me, but more importantly, let's look at what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to look at what is wellbeing, because it's a word that people use very often, and it's such a broad umbrella. So we're just going to focus it down into what it means in the workplace. Then we're going to look at some techniques or tips on returning to work. So after the pandemic and everyone now coming back into the office, some things that we can do to help support them back into work. Certainly, I know I'm working with a lot of people one-to-one now where their anxiety is massively being impacted by the pandemic, actually more so than going into lockdown. It's actually increased now that they're coming out again. Then we'll look at some signs and symptoms of poor mental health, because as employers working with teams, it's really important that we are able to spot signs and symptoms to proactively support our teams. We'll look at the HSE requirements in terms of managing stress in the workplace, and then think about the benefits of a proactive approach and what that proactive approach might look like. The other thing I might want to add is that there is an awesome relaxation exercise that we can all take part in at the end if we get time, but don't feel any pressure. If you don't want to do it, you can just ignore it. But yeah, Becky and Leanne and James are quite keen that I get that in.
Absolutely, we're definitely doing the relaxation exercise, aren't we?
Even if I don't finish the presentation, we'll go straight into the relaxation exercise. Fabulous. Okay, so let's start with what is well-being. So has anybody got any thoughts, and we can put them in the chat, around when you hear the word well-being, what comes into your mind instantly? I can't see the chat, but so I don't know if anyone's saying anything. Oh, we've got one.
Balance and healthy minds.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting because very often when we're thinking about workplace well-being, let me just share this next screen, a lot of employers will focus on the environment and some physical aspects of well-being, but very often the emotional aspect and the part of the mind, the healthy mind, is something that employers that I work with have tended to shy away from in the past. Mental health is something that people struggle to talk about at times, and this is all about being open and honest with our teams. So when we're talking about workplace well-being, we need to think about the environment within which we work, which is fairly obvious, and all good employers have all of these things nailed down. So I'm not teaching you to suck eggs as HR professionals. You all know about a good work environment for your teams. Many employers will offer kind of gym membership as part of their package. They might offer smoking cessation courses. They might have a nutritionist that comes in and gives advice on healthy eating and exercise and things like that. But what I would really like to focus on today is the support that we need to be putting in place in our places of work for the mind. Okay, so when we're talking about well-being, it is the holistic, it's the whole package. But today we wanted to focus on the mental health side. And when we look at workplace well-being, specifically in terms of mental health, if you look at this diagram now, in the centre there is the line managers being competent and confident in mental health support. How many of you would believe that your line managers that you work with have got that level of competency and confidence right now today?
That's everybody, I think, Nicki.
Everybody says yes. Okay.
Well, I take silence to mean yes. So you know.
Okay, silence says everybody is competent and confident.
No, I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but it varies between line managers, needs reviewing regularly, a no, which is interesting, and it varies. So, and another no. So yeah, dependent on line manager.
Yeah, and I would agree. As a person, you can either naturally engage in it or you can steer away from it. And unfortunately, and it's still very true, that in the male workforce, it's still, yeah, James is looking at me. I can see you. It's true though, and very often I work in lots of manufacturing and engineering companies, and mental health is something that they just are really uncomfortable with initially. But once we start having the conversations, then it becomes a lot easier. So as part of our workplace wellbeing, we need to have that. We need to have our line managers feeling confident and competent. We need to carry out stress risk assessments proactively rather than because an individual has gone off work with stress or poor mental health. We need to have access to some wellbeing techniques and signposting for where people can get support. And often employers will have EAP, employee assistance programs, as you know, where individuals can access counselling. But actually, that's at the point that they've already had an absence. And I'm a big advocate for putting things in place to prevent the absence in the first place. And all of that is surrounded by that framework for discussion, a real tangible, open and honest, this is how we support our employees in terms of well-being, particularly mental health. Okay, any questions on workplace well-being before I move on? No? Okay. So let's look at returning to work after lockdown. I'm assuming that many of you, as James and Becky said when you first came on, you're now kind of back in the workplace, but many employers are now offering that flexible approach, aren't they? It's not full time in the office. You can have work from home, etc. But there are a lot of individuals. Oh, James?
Can I be Peter Pedant, please?
You can.
Are we returning to work after lockdown? Or are we returning to the workplace, Nicki?
What?
Well, for many people, they've been working very hard for the last 18 months.
I agree. Yes.
Working.
Yes.
You've fallen into the trap, I'm afraid, where I get to go and say, lots of people are returning to the workplace. So,
do you know, and I love the fact that you've seen this presentation and only picked it up when everyone else was watching. Thanks, James. Yes,
I pick it up because I think it's an important point that we often say, "Oh, I'm going to work today," and that's what we mean, whether it's at home or whether it's in the workplace. But I think the media gets it wrong, and I think it sends funny messages. Which is, I know I'm slightly embarrassing you, and I apologise for that. But I think it's right that we actually pick up on. I think language is important here, and I know that's.
I totally agree and completely understand. Actually, you're right. It's about going back into the work because everybody's worked from home. Most people have worked from home. I know my husband has been working at home, and actually he's been working more hours because it's in the house. Yeah. So I think it's important that you're right.
All right. Shutting up now.
Thank you. I'll need some therapy after this. Okay, so returning to the workplace after lockdown, let's just look at some general principles that we can consider for our teams coming back into the office. So communication is really, really important. As I said earlier, that framework for discussion, all about listening and encouraging that open conversation about how people are feeling, and also keeping them up to date on what measures are being taken to keep them safe in the environment. Yeah. So if people know, if they've got that knowledge and understanding, and they also know who they can talk to if they're feeling a bit concerned, then they're less likely to trigger that stress and anxiety about coming back. Now, many people, as James alluded to earlier, are really excited about going back into the office, just can't wait. But there are equally a big group of people that are very fearful, and we need to be able to support that. We need to also consider the people that are fearful are going back into the office with people that are not fearful, and how we manage that as well. Okay, because we need to think about, as individuals ourselves, just because we might not be feeling concerned and stressed and anxious about it doesn't mean that other people aren't. So it's about considering the rest of the team. Keep the team up to date in terms of their safety. What infection control measures are in place for hand washing, sanitizing? Are you insisting on face masks still or not? Because as employers, we have a choice. Talk to them about what the social distancing measures are in place as well, or if there is any. There may not be. Again, it's about choice, isn't it, as an employer? Just some government requirements as well, and the changes to statutory sick pay. If they're in isolation, it's now SSP from day one. This may be something that you all know, but I just thought I'd put it on there anyway. And there's also now a relaxed requirement for the MedCert after 7 days. Equally, you are able to give them an option to work from home if they're isolating but feel well. So just some points to consider in terms of the government requirements. And James, there was something you mentioned the other day as well about £500.
Yeah, there's the potential for getting £500 if you are told to self-isolate. Look at the government website if you need the details. Just to pick up on comment from Tracy, because it triggered something in my brain. Tracy says, sadly, I think there's still an incorrect perception in some pockets that working from home isn't real work. I think, sadly, Tracy, you're right. Some of you may have seen the rise of the spyware that some of the employers are putting in, so that they are monitoring through either the technology looks at how often you move your mouse, and then you get the rise of the little thing that will move the mouse for you so that you appear that you are working, and then the other spyware that's looking at you and demanding that whether you eat during the day or not to eat whilst you're on, and all this sort of stuff. That for me goes to trust, doesn't it? And that massively negatively impacts on people's well-being. It has to. If that's what it would be like in the workplace, I doubt it. Why would it be any different? And it's that intrusion into people's homes, and then the effect on how that is, and from a well-being perspective, Nicki, that must be pretty hard.
Yeah, awful. And I think initially when we went into lockdown and were working from home, that was certainly my perspective in terms of the people that I'm close to, is that they were working harder, longer, taking less breaks, because there was that fear of, what if they don't think I'm working? So it's a whole cultural thing, isn't it? And I think you're right. And the impact on well-being is big. As I say, there's so many individuals now that I'm working with on a one-to-one basis that have triggered stress and anxiety because of the way they're being managed in terms of their employer. Yeah, good point. The last one, and what a suggestion that I might make to you, is that maybe it's a time to be having those one-to-one meetings with each of the individuals as they return to the workplace, and just ask them how they're feeling, talk openly to them about it. Maybe it's time to complete a stress risk assessment, just so that you as an employer have an understanding of how the team are feeling, and then can put measures in place to support them. Okay. Any comments or feedback on the returning to the workplace? No? Okay, I'll move on. So the reason that we've got signs and symptoms in here is, as I said earlier, if you can recognise the signs and symptoms, then you've got that opportunity to have the conversation with the individual. And very often, it's the signs and symptoms that we recognise in ourselves that we can recognise in other people. Now, just as information, 1 in 4 people in the UK, and actually recent research suggests that it's now 1 in 3 people in the UK every year will suffer with anxiety, depression, and or stress. It's huge, absolutely huge. When we're thinking about anxiety, again, that's another umbrella, a bit like well-being. Anxiety is a big umbrella, but the term covers generalized anxiety, where people are kind of wake up in the morning, running the anxiety program, and will do so all day long. OCD is more specific. Anxiety is our mind searching for certainty. So at times we can then develop OCD because we're over controlling the things that we do have control of. So that's when rituals might come in, or lights on and off, that kind of thing, that double checking, OCD. Panic disorder as well as anxiety. So generalized anxiety is kind of that high alert, whereas panic disorder is that regular panic attack type situation. And if any of you have ever witnessed a panic attack, either personally or watched somebody else go through it, it's scary, really scary. The amount of people that have admitted themselves to A&E convinced they're dying, having a heart attack, when it's a panic attack. And then PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Very often PTSD in the past has been associated with the kind of armed forces and Afghanistan, etc. But actually PTSD is triggered by any event that our mind perceives to be traumatic. So it can even be the fact that they have a bad experience through COVID can have triggered PTSD for individuals. Then we have depression, and again, another kind of broad approach, because we have kind of feeling low mood to depression, and it also covers bipolar. And stress is a thing that we need to focus on as employers. Long-term exposure to stress is likely to trigger conditions such as anxiety and depression. So it's really important that we recognise the signs of stress, albeit not defined by the Equality Act, as it says on the slide there, and that we are able to support our teams in reducing that stress in the workplace. Now, as an employer, whilst it's a requirement that we do that in the workplace, very often my experience has shown that stress isn't triggered by the workplace, but we come into the workplace stressed, and then it's the last straw or the last drop in the bucket of stress that's triggered by work that then causes us to be absent from work. So it's really important. And just right now, let's think about stress specifically. One of the easiest ways to do this is to think about what happens to you when you feel stressed. So every thought we have creates a physical response. So whilst we have emotions, our body physically is impacted by stress as well. So I'm wondering if any of you would like to just pop into the chat some of the things that the emotions you experience when you know you're stressed. What's your warning sign? Or how does your body feel? So I know for me, when I'm feeling stressed, and I can feel it since James asked me the workplace question, a little bit of tension going on around my neck here. Okay, so that's my kind of sign that, Nicki, you need to just take a deep breath and take a step back. In terms of emotion, things that people share with me are anger, frustration, snappy, crying, that kind of thing. Feeling overwhelmed, withdrawing, taking a step back. So have we got some comments that you can share?
Yeah, so headaches, breathing much higher in the chest. So it's I think that's called shallower breathing rather than down into that diaphragm, if I'm getting all anatomical. Loss of appetite, not in the stomach. Yeah. That's a good one. Scatterbrained. Becky, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say the butterflies, I think.
Yeah, I get that pain between my shoulder blades. Where you and particularly where you feel that you haven't taken enough exercise.
Somebody brought up here as well disrupted sleep. So it's one of those. It's not just immediate. It's that long-term stress, isn't it? It's like more for 24 hours. You can feel the constant. That can be, your body stress, but then it's affecting your sleep. So therefore, it almost rolls on to the next day, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Classic, finding decision making tricky. So it's that reluctance to commit to make a decision. So you oscillate, vacillate, whatever the right word is.
Procrastinate.
Any other words ending in ate? Yes.
Yeah.
Lack of focus, insomnia, emotional. Yeah.
Yeah.
ABC cycle. But tell us about that one, Becky.
So what's this? A. Oh, sorry, my screen's gone. James, can you?
Autonomic, how you feel physically. B is behaviors, and C is cognitions. So they all go around in a vicious cycle of stress and maintain each other. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a vicious circle, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been really, really good feedback. And when we move on to the slides, I'll talk to you about why. The point that you were making about sleep, very often when we're stressed, we're not able to switch off. And then we're not getting that deep quality of sleep, are we? And just as an aside, the relaxation exercise that I'll share with you later, a lot of people use that as their switch off, because that's their signal that that's it, done for the day. We're going to sleep now. Just before I move on, let's just remind ourselves as well, though, that stress itself isn't necessarily a negative thing. So when we feel stressed, our energy is diverted away from our digestive system, hence the lack of eating or sometimes overeating, into our muscles. It's the fight or flight response. And at times it's really beneficial, but if we've got a project deadline or an urgent, whatever it might be, to have that additional adrenaline and energy to meet that requirement. But if at the point with that requirement's been met, the energy and the stress doesn't then dissipate, that's when we need to be thinking about how we better manage ourselves, our emotions and our stress. Just want to share this diagram with you in terms of the long-term exposure to stress on the body. And this covers some of the things that you were saying. So we were talking about aches, or I was. Headaches is another one that's on there as well. And we talked about butterflies and the intestines particularly. Just as an awareness, 80% of IBS cases are emotionally related rather than any physical condition. It's huge, 80%. So recognizing that every thought creates a physical response, and when we're feeling the stress, the impact of our bodies onto our bodies. Okay. So now just thinking about the feedback. Oh, sorry, James, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that I think studies have shown, and if I'm remembering correctly, that we all need a bit of good stress, don't we? So there's good stress and bad stress. That's probably terribly inexact way of describing it, but otherwise we don't do anything. So a bit of stress allows us to function and get stuff done. I edited that.
Resilience as well. It's that building resilience, isn't it? That you should be able to deal with a point of stress.
It's when it tips over. Yeah.
And as part of my resilience training, we talk about the stress bucket and how everyone's got a bucket. And some have got big buckets, some have got small buckets, but it's not about the size of the bucket in terms of resilience. It's about how often we open the tap at the bottom to let that stress flow through. I need to put my teeth in. Thank you. Thinking about the feedback you gave me in terms of the signs of stress, if we then look at the conditions that we often experience when we've got anxiety, for example, we can see how closely related they are, and therefore why it is so important to manage stress. So the muscle tension, the racing heart. James, you said the racing heart, didn't you? Or at least you read it from the chat. Misplaced fear. So often that is the next stage from putting decisions off and being able to unable to focus. Everything's going to go wrong, so I need to not do anything, kind of thing. The poor sleep, so not being able to switch off, maybe waking in the night. That need to be in control, which I spoke about earlier. Often if we are looking at our colleagues, we can think about, are they sitting too close to the door? Are they the kind of person, when you go into a meeting room, they have to sit next to the door? That kind of thing is a sign of potentially they're experiencing anxiety. And then also avoidance is another one, which is quite easier to spot than it is. So for example, if I'm sitting here with my muscles tense, if they're not like that, with my muscles tense, I've got pains in my chest and my heart's racing, it's not visible to you. Yeah, so you can hide mental health conditions, but sometimes it's the behaviours that we need to recognise and to spot. So if you have a colleague that always sits close to the door, that kind of thing, maybe an indicator. And if they're now not as involved as they used to be in terms of social situations, coming to meetings, things like that, that's another indication that potentially they need some support. The same too in terms of that connection between stress and depression. We're talking about loss of appetite. Pain, very often pain is a cause for depression. 75% of people that have chronic recurring pain suffer with depression. And that's another key point that I want to make here, is that very often on the sickness absence reports, if you're, as an employer, you're looking and going, well, we've only had 4 people off with stress in the last 10 years. What we also need to look at is musculoskeletal, because very often that's what's put down on a med cert rather than stress, anxiety or depression. Musculoskeletal. Anger is another key one with depression, and that withdrawal, that cold, distant, emotionless kind of behaviour. Indecision, which comes back to that lack of focus, and again, sleep. But equally with depression, sometimes too much sleep. They just want to sleep, just don't want to haven't got that level of stress that James was talking about to give them that energy to even kind of go through the day. Okay, coping mechanisms are sometimes easier to spot, as I've mentioned earlier. So if you're thinking across your team and looking at the people that you work with, avoidance is obviously more obvious if they're not in work, if they're sickness absence, or they're not as engaged as they were. Would you know as an employer whether your team are kind of getting that quick fix through alcohol or drugs? Maybe it's their performance the next day that you may kind of need to look at. And projection is another one that's really key with mental health conditions. It's about the other person. So if you've got a team member who maybe talks to you about how they're being unkind or they're being angry or and it's that projection of how they're feeling and recognizing it in other people. So very often that can be a sign as well of some extra support being required. Any questions on signs and symptoms? No. Okay, so let's move on to the HSE requirements. And again, I may be teaching you to suck eggs as HR professionals. You're probably fully aware of HSE requirements, but I'll share them anyway. So failure to manage stress at work could be a breach of the Health and Safety at Work Act. If you're aware of this, then let me know. Stress risk assessment should be carried out and documented. Now, I'm really surprised with the number of employers that I speak to that have absolutely no process in terms of stress risk assessment. I don't know if you do. If you do, then put it in the chat and let me know. But they need to be carried out and documented. And this requirement kicks in if you employ 5 or more people in your organisation. Failure to complete the risk assessments may result in a personal injury claim if the individual is then impacted by that. And they may claim discrimination if you fail to make reasonable adjustments for a serious long-term mental health illness. Okay, this could be what you're aware of, maybe not, maybe I am teaching you something new. This is a big shocker, the financial impact in terms of mental ill health in the UK. So it's the leading cause for sickness absence and costing around £1,035 per employee per year for employers. And that's in terms of sick pay, recruitment costs, retraining costs, all of the stuff. As an employer myself, the aggravation of trying to backfill when you've got sickness absence is a real challenge, and it's that cost per employee.
And let's face it, that cost is just going to rocketed from, no doubt, the impact of the pandemic over the last 18 months.
Absolutely. So I don't believe that we're fully seeing that impact at the moment. So these are the current stats, but I am sure that this time next year, these figures will be a lot higher. Yeah, absolutely.
Just pausing there, a question that we need to encourage conversations and talking about mental health. I completely agree with that. And then a question, is there a risk assessment guide / template we could refer to? I guess that's the stress risk assessment. Presumably there is something on the HSE, or does your business help with that? Plug for you.
Thank you very much. Yes, it does. I'll come on to the stress risk assessments when we get to the proactive approach. But yes, there is one on the HSE website. But let me tell you about what it doesn't do. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So 1 in 3 employees will experience some form of mental health issue while at work, but only 5% of these will give mental health as the reason for their absence. And that's where I'm talking about musculoskeletal as well, when you're looking at your sickness absence reasons. Really, the message that I want to get across today is that unless we have these open conversations, people can hide mental ill health from their employers. Not easily, but they can do it. And unless you're allowing that open support and two-way conversation, then you may never know. But you will still have the disengagement, the loss of staff, and the sickness absence rates. Okay. And then there's some more costs at the bottom there in terms of the UK employers as a whole. And we're in the billions.
Nicki, can I ask you something? I'd be really interested to know your views on this. We've obviously seen a drive in mental health training. So many people share on LinkedIn that they've undergone the course, they're mental health first aiders, they're mental health champions. I know we've invested in it in our business. Do you think, are we seeing that's obviously an on-cost for companies to train their staff? And I'll be interested to know what people are thinking. Are we seeing more conversations? Because what I'm hearing today, we've spent money in investing in our staff to be trained, but it's not working, or we're still not having the conversations. I'd be interested to know what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, I would be interested in what comes through on the chat. And while it does, my experience is that we have to have the whole workplace wellbeing strategy in place. So many employers have taken the let's put our team on MHFA and tick a box.
Yeah. And that's, I wonder, are we ticking a box? But actually, if we put out to our businesses, okay, you've got this pool of people that are trained, would you go and talk to them?
And not.
And I think not, clearly, because the figures are still going up. But yeah, be interested to know what people's views are.
MHFA as well. I've done the MHFA training and it is very good. I'm not knocking MHFA in any way. However, it is, once it's happened, this is how you can deal with it. Whereas I'm a big advocate of putting measures in place and being proactive so it doesn't.
Yeah. And I think the training is about, we're not there to diagnose, absolutely not, as mental health first aiders, but you're there to signpost and encourage people to have those conversations.
Yeah. Many organisations have got MHFA, mental health champions, and then individuals in the organisation are unaware of who these people are.
Yeah.
Or actually as well, if you don't know the person, you're less likely to have that conversation, which is why my personal opinion is all line managers need to be able to do this.
Yeah, definitely.
Proactively, rather than know how to manage it if somebody tells me that they need help.
And it's a signpost. It's to say it's okay to tell us you're struggling and we can support you and guide you in the right direction to get the help you need. Yeah,
absolutely. Has there been any? So I think we've got a couple.
There's a few on here actually. Let's have a look. Mental health first aiders need to meet as a team in the workplace regularly. One training session isn't enough. Absolutely. We have mental health first aiders and still feel we need to make more of their training and promote them as people who can help. Yeah, completely agree. It's important because the training does tick the box. It's what you then do with it. We've done a lot of mental health training and the culture has become much more open and people will talk about their mental health. Brilliant. That's not easy.
Yeah. And it is that's the key point, is culture. It's not about the training. It is about the whole culture of the organisation embracing the well-being. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for your input there. Sorry to interrupt, Nicki.
No, I'm glad that you did. Okay, so let's look at a proactive approach. So yes, the short answer is this is exactly what my company does for employers. So we work with you in terms of developing a wellbeing strategy. That strategy consists of training line managers in mental health and able to have those conversations. Now it's signs and symptoms, but more importantly, and from experience as a manager, when you do the stress risk assessments, it feels as though the employee will walk in, give it everything, and then it's all my fault as the manager and I've got to fix the world. Okay. And if I don't do this and I don't do that, then this person's going to be off sick with stress. Okay. Now, actually, and this is where I'm talking about the proactive approach, the management training that we provide helps managers to move the individual from cause to effect as part of the risk assessment process. So we use neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP techniques, okay? And it's a coaching model that asks specific questions of the individual for them to come up with the solutions themselves. Because very often the stress in the workplace might be caused by the fact that this team are never telling us what they're doing and it's impacting on my deadlines and I can't manage it, for example. Okay. But as part of that, the individual is then action planned to open the line of communications. You come up with a SMART objective for the individual to make the change to therefore reduce their stress in the workplace. It's not about filling in a form and as a manager, I've got to fix that problem. It's about empowering the individual to move from cause to effect and therefore reduce the stress. Really, really important stuff. And that's what I mean about the proactive approach. It's not about filling in a form. It's about empowering the individual. That also means that the action plan that then comes out of these risk assessments, the changes that at employer level that you need to make are minimal because the individuals are making the change to help reduce their stress. So it's win-win. Yeah. The wellbeing strategy is the overarching plan. The clear communication around that strategy helps to increase the culture in terms of well-being. Line managers' competence and confidence then enables those open conversations, and the training around how to have the conversations, how to carry out the risk assessment template is all key and critical to really embedding well-being within an organisation. And the best part about this process is that it has measurable ROI, which is something that very often companies cannot, and we can't measure it because it's emotion. But actually there's measures within this process that allow you to say, this was our sickness absence rates pre, this is now, this is our engagement rate, this is now. So we can demonstrate a clear ROI. The risk assessment template that is provided by the Wellbeing people is similar to the one that you can download from the HSE website. So the short answer to the question that was asked earlier is yes, there is a template on the HSE website that you can follow. And if you want to tick the box, then that's absolutely what you need to do. If you feel that you've got that level of competence and confidence in carrying that out yourselves, then brilliant. If not, then we're here to help. Any questions?
Just some really good comments, but no questions.
Okay. So that's the end of the presentation. If we don't have any questions, are we happy to move into the relaxation exercise if I stop the screen share? James is nodding. Excellent. Okay. So a lot of you have already got your screens off, but it's great to see some faces. So the relaxation exercise, I'm a massive advocate of. As part of my wellbeing training in the workplace, I provide this relaxation exercise electronically for individuals. And as part of your attendance today, if you would like to have a copy, then feel free to contact me and I'll share my contact details once I've just done this exercise. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and why I suggest that you can turn your screen off if you want to, is because I'm going to ask you to do this with your eyes closed, because as adults, we're bombarded by so many bits of information that we can't just shut down. So I ask you to shut your eyes. I then ask you to tense all the muscles in your feet and relax them, your calves, your thighs, all the way up to the top of your head. Okay, that's the physical relaxation part. Then I ask you to open your eyes, take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, just allow your eyes to close. Then I ask you to use your imagination, which is awesome. As we get older, we struggle. We don't use our imagination as much as we do when we're kids. So it's just a really nice process. I ask you to imagine you're standing on a terrace looking down into a garden. We walk down the steps, across the grass, and sit on a bench. And we just chill out in the garden. And it's a really good switch off technique. And as I say, I can send it to you if you want it at the end. So those of you that don't want to do it, feel free to just sit there for a few minutes, but those that do, feel free again to turn your screen off in case you're worried that everyone's staring at you. But if you just make yourselves as comfy as you can, wherever you might be, and then just close your eyes. And now just take a deep breath in through your nose. And as you breathe out, just give yourself permission to relax, just let go. Right now, just for now. Nobody needs anything. Nobody wants anything. This is your time. So first of all, turn your attention to your feet and just picture the muscles working as you now tense all the muscles in your feet. Just squeeze them up. And now begin to relax them slowly and thoroughly until every muscle is soft and easy. Now keep your feet relaxed and gently tighten the calf muscles, those muscles from behind the knee to the ankle. And now begin to relax them too. So those muscles are soft and easy as well. Move up now to the muscles in your thighs. Tighten those muscles and you'll feel the pull along the front of your legs. And then just begin to relax them. Your legs feeling a little heavier as you let them sink into the chair. You find too that your breathing is easier and more relaxed. And every time you breathe out, you can just relax even more. So up now to your tummy and lower back muscles, bands of muscles surrounding your hips. Tighten them now, feel them pulling. And then begin to relax them. Picture them as they slide back over each other into a comfortable position, resting easily. And now the chest and back muscles, tighten them first, picture them tightening. And then just begin to relax them. Feel your spine settle as you now reduce the muscular support. Now the muscles across the top of your back and shoulders, tense them from your spine out to your shoulders, and then just let that tension fall away. Your shoulders relax and droop. Just let them rest comfortably. Now the muscles of your arms, begin from your shoulders, tense your upper arms, your forearms, your hands, and stiffen your fingers. Relax those fingers first. Now your hands and wrists. Let your forearms relax, and now your upper arms. So your arms are completely relaxed and resting comfortably. Now make sure your neck is resting comfortably as it balances your head in an easy position. And gently tighten the columns of muscles surrounding your neck. Feel them, be aware of them, and now begin to relax them. Think of the muscles at the back of your neck and let them rest too. Now the muscles of your face, these are flat and lie across the bone structure of your face. Feel them first by squeezing up your face. Become aware of the pull around your eyes and mouth. And now begin to relax them. Around your eyes, your mouth, along the line of your jaw. And as you relax the muscles in your face, your skin becomes smoother. Now let that relaxation in your face rise up to include your scalp. So you're relaxed from the top of your head right down to the tips of your toes. Completely relaxing. In a few moments, I'll ask you to open your eyes. Look up to the ceiling, take a deep breath in. Count to 5, and as you breathe out, just allow your eyes to close and stay closed. So open your eyes now. Look up. Deep breath in. Count to 5. And as you breathe out, just allow your eyes to close and stay closed. And now with your eyes gently closed, you can totally relax your eyes. Be aware of their roundness. Relax the tiny muscles in your eyelids. Be aware of the temperature of the air against your eyelids. And with the next deep breath you take, just let that extra relaxation in your eye area flow right through your body, completely relaxing. And now you're more deeply relaxed. You can picture things clearly. So just imagine you're standing on a terrace, looking down into a beautiful garden. In front of you are steps leading down into the garden, and from the bottom step, a lush green lawn stretches away. Imagine it's a warm, still, sunny day. The sunlight's warmth is soothing, and its brilliance lights up every detail of the garden. Trees and shrubs completely surround the garden, shielding and sheltering it, making it private. There are flower beds set into the lush green lawn, and these are filled with the most beautiful, colourful flowers. As you look more closely, you notice there are 5 steps leading down to a lower terrace, and more steps leading down to the lawn itself. In a moment, we'll walk down the first 5 steps, and as we go down each step, you can relax even more. So down the first step and relaxing. The second step, relaxing even more. The third step, deeper and deeper. The 4th step, deeper still. And the 5th step, very deeply relaxed indeed. As you stand on the lower terrace in the warm sunlight, you see a large flower vase just to one side of you, filled with the most beautiful flowers. Really be aware of the colour of those flowers. And in a moment, we'll walk down the next 5 steps, down to the lawn itself. And once again, you can relax and go even deeper with each step we take. So down the first step and relaxing. The second step, relaxing even more. The third step, deeper and deeper. The fourth step, deeper still. And the fifth step, very deeply relaxed indeed. Now you're in the garden, standing on the edge of the lawn. There on the lawn, a little way in front of you, you see a garden bench. In a moment, we'll walk across to the bench, it's not far. When we get there, I'll ask you to sit down. As you sit down on your bench, you can be even more relaxed. So let's begin walking now. You might feel the grass beneath your feet. The smell of the flowers just becoming apparent. Aware of the peace and quiet of this tranquil, private place. And here we are by the bench, so sit down and allow yourself to relax even more. Just spend a few moments on your bench in your garden. And then, when you're ready, you can just open your eyes. There we go. So I will just share the screen again. Has anyone got any questions or any feedback from the relaxation exercise?
That was amazing. Thank you, Nicki.
Oh, you're welcome.
I enjoyed that. I needed that this morning. Thank you.
I spend a lot of time on my bench.
I have a feeling that you've done that before.
Me, just a few times. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got it completely off by heart now.
It's one of those soothing voices, isn't it? Was the ASMR, which they record either voices or noises that relax people. You have that beautiful quality in that voice. Thank you, Nicki.
No, you're very welcome.
Comment here. Thank you. I need to do that more often. Thank you. It was very relaxing.
Next one, Becky. Next one, Becky.
I had a busker singing Ed Sheeran outside my office. So that was an added bonus. Brilliant. It sounds like everybody's really enjoyed that, and it's just a nice 10 minutes time out.
Yeah, it's really important that we all take time for ourselves always. And very often people can't find the time to do like an hour out or whatever it might be. So that's a really good way. 10 minutes, we can all find 10 minutes. So it's really important. I've got my contact details on the screen there if anybody wants to contact me, and I can either for advice in terms of the information that I've shared today, or simply if you just want a copy of the recording, then please do get in touch.
Thank you to everybody for joining us. We'll be running an event in December. Depending on guidelines, whatever happens, we are hoping we will try and do a face-to-face meeting. We will hold an event to celebrate the year, Christmas time. You know, everybody knows me. I love a bit of Christmas, but watch this space. Depending on guidelines, we will try and do a in-person event. So
I got some love for that. So let's definitely make it happen. Okay.
Yeah, we will definitely try. Depending on guidelines, we will try and make that happen. So, but Nicki, thank you for your time, for spending the morning with us and giving us some really good tips. Relaxation, I think everybody's going to be using.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you. Thank you.
We will keep in touch. We will let you know when we've got some dates for December. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with James and I.